What's up, fellas and fellow rats? I'm Graham. One thing I had no clue about before coming to Liberty was a CGL. I have another video about what spiritual life is like at Liberty that shows how a CGL fits into the hierarchy at Liberty, but this video is about CGL specifically and how to become one if you're interested. A CGL is a community group leader. CGLs are at every dorm on campus and basically help lead the hall. RAs, resident assistants, are in charge of rules, RSs, resident shepherds, are in charge of spiritual life, and then serving under them are the CGLs, community group leaders. The number on each hall varies, but there's typically 6 to 8 to 10 depending on the size of the hall or what part of campus the dorm is. For this video, most of the information is from my personal experience, but it applies to all CGLs in general. Just keep in mind things may be a little different, depending on what hall you are on. This video also has a lot of information and things, may get a little too complicated or confusing for you, so I'll try to help you out by throwing this friendly looking creature on the screen. So, let's get started. The obvious thing CGLs do on campus are helping move freshmen in during welcome week, leading a community group every Wednesday night, and then interacting with their community group throughout the week. But behind the scenes, they do even more. CGLs attend a weekly class, meet with hall leadership each week, meet with the resident shepherds weekly as well during lead group, and are expected to attend most hall events. They spend about 5 hours a week fulfilling CGL responsibilities. Anyone can apply to be a CGL, but because of how the hiring process works, there's very few freshmen who actually do it. If you're interested in becoming one, this is how the hiring process works. First, in October of the fall semester, the resident shepherd hiring process begins. This ends in February, and from there, the RSs hire the CGLs for their halls for the upcoming year. There is a CGL interest meeting where the Office of Spiritual Development at Liberty literally reads off the webpage, and then the next day, the application portal opens. The application takes about an hour or so to complete well, and has questions like, how would you explain the gospel message to a non-believer? Or, what has your spiritual discipline looked like in the past 3 months? Or, what previous mission or ministry experience do you have? They're questions that take some effort to fill out. 2 tips to keep in mind. The first is, if you filled out the application for RS, Resident Shepherd, earlier in the year, most of the questions are the exact same, and if you follow the next tip, that can be helpful. And that next tip is simply to answer the questions in a Google or a Word document and then copy and paste onto the application, because the application portal has issues and has crashed before and doesn't save your work. People have lost a lot of their work or all of their work before. So write your answers in another document, and if you did that for your RS application too, it comes in real handy. You can just duplicate answers. Once your application form is submitted, you get a few emails about when decisions will be made, keeping you updated. Basically, this is just the first round, and most people get through it if they put effort into their applications. The Office of Spiritual Development at Liberty checks almost 1,000 or so of these, so they appreciate brief but descriptive answers. Don't write a book, just a summary in your responses to help them out. Then you'll get an email about whether you are approved or not, and from there, if you are approved, you go on to a CGL Fair. It's only one night, and guys and girls at different times. Almost every hall in existence is going to have a table set up at the CGL Fair and try and get CGLs to come to their hall. There's posters of donuts and snacks and matching t-shirts and stuff. The best advice I have is to know which halls you want to apply to and then stick to that. You'll see some great halls and add those to your list, but set a limit. Every hall you apply to, you're expected to have an interview with, and scheduling your interviews can get a little, hectic. It's a hassle. My rule of thumb would be to apply to about 4 halls. That way, if you get turned down, you have some backups, but it's not too stressful during interviews. I applied to 8 because it was so hard to say no to all the great people I met, but later I had to unapply from several that I knew I just wouldn't be going to regardless, and it was a lot of hassle. So stick to around 4 to 6. Literally the night of the CGL Fair, you'll start getting emails about scheduling interviews with the halls you signed up with. Jump on it. Not only will the good times disappear, but if it's a hall you really want to be on, sometimes RSs will start offering the positions as the interviews happen instead of waiting till they're all over. And then, if you're at the end, they'll run out of space. So jump on it early. Every hall does it differently and to different levels of professionalism. One hall had personalized emails and reminder texts for their interviews that showed you exactly where to go with directions, while the hall that actually ended up hiring me didn't really tell me where the interview was, so I hunted down a phone number and asked. And then the interviews begin. You schedule one with each hall you applied to and see what the answers are. If it's a hall you know the leaders of, you should know your chances of getting hired pretty well. And if it's a hall you don't know the leaders of, you have to do your best to stand out. Some halls like ground floor of the SHU, Commons 3 were pretty popular. They had close to 45 or 50 applicants, while some dorms at East Campus or the quads had only a handful. My goal was to try to get back on the Hill while also having a backup at Commons if I didn't get accepted anywhere at the Hill. And then interviews begin. My first interview was at the SHU, Commons 3, and had all the RSs and RAs in it. It was a little stressful. Being my first one, it went pretty well, but I was super impressed with the hall leadership in that interview. My second interview was with a Hill dorm that I didn't know the RSs of. It was a meeting at the library near Argo T, and it went well, although I knew I didn't really stand out. I also interviewed with a hall that I lived on this year, and it had 3 people per interview, which made it a little interesting, a little different. And then the final interview was for a Hill dorm, although the RSs had the interview in Commons where they were at currently. Some interviews had the RAs as well, but there wasn't a set pattern really. This is where you wish you had only applied to a few halls at the CGL Fair because scheduling the interviews takes time. Each interview is 20 to 30 minutes and typically starts with you being asked to pray to get started. Then you'll probably get an icebreaker question such as, what's the biggest animal you could take down with your bare hand? Or something like that. And then the RSs will ask you all sorts of questions about the gospel, how your current quiet time is, what you think a CGL should be, and then, stuff like that. My biggest tip is just to think over a few possible answers, but don't dwell on it too much because you don't know what you're going to be asked. And trying to memorize everything will stress you out. All my interviews went well enough, although 2 of them I knew I didn't really stand out. One offered quickly after and then needed an answer by a certain date, but since it was my backup dorm, I had to wait for answers from the other interviews first. I got 2 no's and 2 yeses, and the hardest part is saying no to the yeses. But once you make a decision or someone makes a decision on you, you'll either accept an offer or just not be a CGL. If you accept, the RSs of your hall will add you, and a few days later you'll get an email saying you are officially selected and ready to serve the next year. So that's the process. It's kind of long, but it's not too complicated or stressful once you understand it. And it's spread out over a lot of time. I compressed all that into like a few minutes. So all the RSs are nice, and they're just trying to find the best people to help with their hall. The rejection does hurt, but you'll get used to it, and you have to realize it's not personal. It's good preparation for life. You might think CGLs get paid or have a scholarship, but CGLs literally do it because they feel called and want to serve. They get the first pick on housing to ensure they actually get on the hall they should be on, but that's literally the only perk. CSER, Christian service hours, are taken care of too. CSER is required for every semester you're residentially at Liberty, and you have to have 20 hours a semester to get a credit. And you can get double credit, but not for being a CGL, even though you serve close to 80 hours total. So with all that information, it may sound complicated, but once you're at Liberty, it makes sense. You see the meetings, you see the emails, reminders, and if you really want to be a CGL, but are an incoming freshman or transfer and don't have time to do the process because you weren't at Liberty during that time, during the year before, a lot of halls hire their CGLs during that first few weeks of the year when they know the people who are going to be on their halls. Sometimes they realize they need more, like my hall this year, and sometimes they have to replace one who left or moved to be a CGL somewhere else. So there's still opportunities to be a CGL even if you weren't at Liberty during the process. So that's pretty much all the information about being a CGL and how to become one. Hopefully that helped a little bit, and thank you for watching this far, which means you actually are interested. I'm probably the type of person who will try to be a CGL, so hopefully it goes well for you. Thanks again for watching.